Hi everyone, today we're on lesson 116 in math. These are your notes for the day. So grab a piece of notebook paper, write down the notes, and then keep working your lesson on the same piece of paper. I want you to write this down, common denominators, and then this example. 1/3 and 2/3 both have the same denominator. So that's an example of fractions with common denominators. Pause the video to give yourself time to write. And then we have an example of fractions with different denominators. 1/3 and 2/6 have different numbers on the bottom of the fraction. Today we're going to be adding and subtracting and comparing fractions, so we need to make sure that they have common denominators before we do that. All right, let's move on to example 1. Example 1, add 1/2 and 1/4. Now some of you can do this in your head, but we're not going to do this in our head. We're going to give them common denominators first. So you have to change 1/2 to something with a denominator of 4 in order to be able to do that. You can't reduce 1/4 to something with a denominator of 2. So we've done this a lot. To get from 1/2 to something with a denominator of 4, we multiply the top and bottom by the same thing. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 1/2 then becomes 2/4, and then we can add that to 1/4. So on your paper, I want you to make sure you write the little multiplication part here, times 2 times 2. Then when we add fractions, we just add the numerators, 3/4. Remember to pause to give yourself time to work. Example 2. We're going to compare these two fractions. Now, we need to have common denominators in order to compare these two fractions. 3/4 and 7/8. I want them to have the same denominator, so I can make 3/4 have a denominator of 7/8. I can't reduce 7/8 to anything that will have a denominator of 4 because I can't divide 7 and 8 both by 2. So I can't reduce this, so I'm not going to change that. I can go ahead and increase this to something with a denominator of 8. So if I multiply the bottom by 2, I have to multiply the top by 2. 3/4 is the same thing as 6/8. And now I can compare them, 6/8 and 7/8. Which one would be bigger? 7/8, of course. Example 3, subtract. And when you do these, you need to work them out. You guys have been bad all year about trying to do fractions in your head, and even those of you who are really good at math miss these problems a lot because you try to do them in your head. Now these fractions don't have common denominators, so that's the first thing I need to do. I have to get a common denominator. What is a common denominator for 2 and 6? The least common multiple would be 6. Now I can't reduce this to something with a denominator of 2, so the easiest thing for me to do is increase this one. If I multiply the top and bottom by 3, I will have a fraction with a denominator of 6. So out next to this problem, I want you to rewrite the whole thing. 4 and 3/6 minus 1 and 1/6. You subtract the fractions first. 3/6 minus 1/6 is 2/6, and 4 minus 1 is 3. Now, there's one more step. 2/6 is not in simplest form. You can reduce that if you divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. So our final answer is 3 and 1/3. Example 4, add Okay, these don't have common denominators. I can't change 1/2 to something with a denominator of 3. Now I can't change 1/3 to something with a denominator of 2. So I need to find something new that they both have in common. And I know that 2 and 3 both are factors of 6. So I can increase both fractions to something with a denominator of 6. So for this fraction, I multiply the top and bottom by 3. This fraction, I have to multiply the top and bottom by 2. Make sure you put those multiplication symbols and numbers up there. Below that, I'll write my new problem. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Now I can add them. 5/6. Okay, pause the video to give yourself time to work if you need to. We're going to move on to lesson practice. I'm going to do the first 3 with you, and then the rest of them will be on your own, and the even problems will be on your own. Okay, 7/12 and 2/3. Now, I know that I can change 2/3 to something with a denominator of 12, so let's just do that. I'm going to multiply the top and bottom both by 4. So my new problem, I'm going to write below that. I'm going to have 7/12 and 8/12. Obviously, 8/12 is bigger. So that's the answer to A. B, we're going to compare 2/5 and 1/3. Now I can't use 5 or 3 as my denominator because 3 doesn't go into 5 and 5 doesn't go into 3. So let's just think of what number would 5 and 3 both go into. What's the least common multiple for them? It is 15. So how do I get to 15? Well, over here, I'm going to multiply by 3. That will get my denominator of 15. And over here, I have to multiply by 5 to get that denominator. So here I have 6/15, and here I have 5/15. So this will be bigger. Then finally, example C. Some of you guys, it asks you which, I think it says something like which person, let me grab my book, sorry. It says, the twins took turns carrying the tin up the mountain. Who carried it farther? Okay, so this is the fraction we have here, 2/4 and 1/2. You might already know the answer to this, but let's go ahead and get a common denominator of 4. So we have 2/4 compared to 2/4. And that's equal. So the answer is neither twin carried it farther.